What's going on, my fellow A-plussers? It's your boy, Adam Perez. I'm back, baby, once again with a brand new episode review as we're going to dive into episode number 6 of Ahsoka. First off, I apologize for the late dropping of this particular episode review for you guys. Honestly, with me going back to the office on Wednesdays and Thursdays, it's really thrown off sort of my recording schedule. And so I do apologize that this is certainly dropping as late as it is. But look, we got 2 more episodes left for this season, and I'm really excited and looking forward to seeing how Dave Filoni certainly wraps it up. I'm not under the impression that this is going to have a happy ending. I do wonder if it's gonna be a little bit of a Empire Strikes Back sort of feeling, like there's a heaviness and a weight here, um, of what happens and what the outcome is with maybe a little bit uncertainty, and it makes me really curious as to what a season like Mandalore season 4 might certainly look like. Because I would assume by the time we get to season 4 that Thrawn, or at least I'm assuming that Thrawn will be back sort of in this galaxy. What that means for this galaxy, who certainly knows, but I'm very much under the impression that Thrawn will probably escape from this particular planet in Peridia. So again, where does that leave Ahsoka? Where does that leave Sabine? Where does that leave Ezra? Who's making it out of here alive? Is somebody biting the dust? Who certainly knows? But there is just, I don't know if it's just this episode that just left this ominous tone, this heaviness, and this weight on me that I'm just like, I am not looking forward to seeing what happens to some of these characters, but I do think it's going to leave a sense of anticipation for what's going to come after something like Ahsoka. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, again, 2 more episodes left. What is the buildup certainly going to be like? And I kind of appreciated even the balance of storytelling these past 2 episodes, right? Last week's episode was very Ahsoka heavy in regards to her dealing with her problems, coming face to face once again with her master, Anakin. We didn't get to see any Sabine or Balin or Morgan sort of thing. This week's episode was definitely flipped around. Ahsoka had but a small part at the very beginning of this, and then it really opens wide up to the introduction of Thrawn as we catch up finally with Sabine, Balin, and Morgan in this episode. So I appreciate the balancing of writing here, and I would assume, if anything, by the time next week comes, I would assume Ahsoka not only arrives, but it's just going to be a back and forth and a much, much more balanced episode character wise and storyline wise. Again, that's the penultimate episode. So they're really going to have to be building some important sort of dialogue and moments to then capitalize on when it comes to episode 8. So we'll see how Dave Filoni does, but I've been really impressed with his writing here so far this season. But let's talk about this episode, shall we? Just a couple things off the top of my head that I certainly enjoyed. First off, seeing Peridia for the first time was pretty cool. I thought it looked spectacular visually and what they were able to do with its special effects, and learning from Balin that Peridia really is sort of like the final trek, or the final mile, if you will, in the life of Purgles. Even though they may use the hyperspace lane to travel back and forth to these galaxies, the idea of coming to this particular planet is really sort of the end all be all of their life. Referring to Peridia as very much as the graveyard for the Purgles. And at first, I thought it was actually pretty cool that this planet has a ring around it. I was like, oh, look, it's got an asteroid field or something like that around it. Only to come to find out it is bones of Purgles. So the idea of him naming it a graveyard, quite literally a graveyard of Purgles, as that ring is in fact Purgle bone. So I thought visually that was pretty menacing and ominous as well. It's like very dreadful. Like, oh man, what are we gonna get ourselves into? But then when you get down to the planet and you see how much of a wasteland it is, it really kinda all adds up. It almost feels like it's a place where people just go to die, if you will. We do come to find out that this is sort of like the ancient homeworld of the Dathomiri. We even get to see these huge, like, statues and sculptures that are built of maybe some Night Sisters or other important Dathomiri. Visually, I thought it was really cool to kinda be introduced to the planet there, and then we even get the opportunity to see one of the towers or one of the castles that they wind up landing on in here. And honestly, the first thing that came to my mind when I saw the tower was I thought it was from Lord of the Rings, the Minas Tirith, the city of Gondor for a second. Just just an all black. It was just like very much on the edge of a mountain, the huge sort of tower sphere, if you will, and then maybe like some of the surrounding buildings around it, sort of thing. Like design wise, it just reminded me of Minas Tirith from the city of Gondor and Lord of the Rings. But visually, I thought it looked pretty cool to say the least. But for me, the man of the hour, the MVP of this episode, was definitely Thrawn. I'm so glad that Dave Filoni managed to finally bring him to live action. It's one of those things where, Lars Mikkelsen, for those of you who don't know, he was the voice actor for Admiral Thrawn in Star Wars Rebels. And so the fact that they were able to get the same voice actor to then play the character in live action, absolutely brilliant. I've heard from past Dave Filoni interviews the idea that trying to adapt Thrawn from animation to live action is no easy task, to the point to where I believe he actually went to Timothy Zahn, the gentleman that actually created the character for the Heir to the Empire trilogy for the Legends books back in the expanded universe days. And then I think Timothy Zahn also went ahead and wrote another trilogy of Thrawn books for now canon, if you will, during that time period. And so the fact that he went to Timothy Zahn, he clearly wanted to understand how important this character was, but also to get it right. And I think Lars Mikkelsen got it right to perfection. I mean, the guy is just menacing. They pulled off the blue skin of that alien species, the Chiss, if I'm pronouncing it right. It looked great with the red eyes. I wasn't quite sure how it would look live action. We've seen bits of it from the trailer, but again, the opportunity to see it in other scenes in here really blew me away. I mean, Lars along with Balin, they just really capture the screen when they're on there. And there is something about the quiet confidence that Admiral Thrawn has about him that you just can't read him very well. You know what I mean? Like perfect example, the idea of how he greets somebody like Balin, almost like kind of accepting him into the fold for the hard work that he did in order to accomplish getting them there and helping him, right? But then by the end of the episode, it's like, Sabine, Ezra, Balin, and them, they're expendable, right? Like we can leave them behind if we certainly need to, but that's really after he learns the idea that Ahsoka is probably still alive and on her way, and certainly assuming so. So very much too quick to turn on you, sort of thing. But he doesn't raise his tone, he doesn't lower it. It's just the way he directs his message. There's just something about it that you just are terrified. And he definitely portrays that menacing aspect of Thrawn extremely well. So shout out to Lars Mikkelsen for certainly pulling that off. And honestly, just the aesthetics, I think, of not only this world, but also getting the opportunity to see the Star Destroyer and the Night Troopers and things like that. They've been through their battles. Whether or not they took all this damage from the first hyperspace jump all the way back to Rebels and then just putting them here, they clearly have been having to try and survive on their own. The list of troopers diminishing slowly. I believe he refers to Morgan in here, who's like, look, we only got but limited, people on hand, sort of thing. But they've definitely have done their part. I am kind of curious if they have fought with anybody on this world, if there's been any pushback, have they had any wars that add to some of that battle damage that we certainly see, or is this all from that big sort of hyperspace jump that we wind up seeing all the way back in Rebels? That I don't know, but I will say this: the the change up, the new look of everything is incredible. Like the gold plating, some of the silver plating that you see on like the Star Destroyer, even some of the stormtrooper outfits and stuff when they're like battle damaged and dirty and worn out, sort of thing. Even some red bandages sort of wrapped around it. Again, I don't know if that's like to symbolize anything or if it's just to patch up some of their armor, but holy cow, the night troopers have such a really cool design. I thought they were like zombie troopers or like dark troopers for a second, sort of thing. But I'm really loving the design of the night troopers and especially Captain Enoch with the really cool gold faceplate. I am kind of curious if he's gonna have the same fate of somebody like Captain Phasma, who I thought looked pretty cool with that chrome stormtrooper's helmet. And we see, unfortunately, how that turned out. So I am kind of curious if Captain Enoch plans on having the same fate You know, same fate. Is he gonna die in episode 7, come back in episode 8, only to die again by the end of episode 8? I have no idea, but I am kind of curious to see how this will certainly play out and if he's just aesthetically somebody really cool to kind of look at. You know what I mean? Another, again, it would not surprise me. Star Wars has this great thing of creating some amazing looking characters, only not to capitalize on them when they have the opportunity to do so. So we'll see how it goes. But I was definitely a big fan of not only the planet that Peridia, and seeing some of the history behind that and things like that, but the return of Thrawn and Lars Mikkelsen, hell of an MVP move in here. Made me very convincing that whatever happens next is not going to be good for anybody in this particular universe, man. So we'll see how this turns out. But let's just talk about some of these characters, if you will, and kind of get a little bit caught up because look, finally, Ezra Bridger is here. Sabine has finally found them. I find it fascinating, again, going back to Thrawn here, that quiet confidence of his, just the idea of like him planning ahead. You know what I mean? The idea of like, yeah, we'll set you free, Sabine. As much of a good gesture as it seems, there's clearly an alternative motive here, and that's the idea of it's like, hey, look, we don't know if Ezra Bridger's still alive, but we would kind of like to find out. So Sabine, why don't you go locate him for us? And then we'll follow you, sort of mentality. And that's what we wind up getting. If it's not Balin hunting for them, it is now 2 squadrons of night troopers that are going to be trying to find Sabine as well. But she does find Ezra with the help of a brand new alien species. I don't know if they're referred to as the Noti, N-O-T-I, the Noti, but they do say in the subtitles like Noti language. So I don't know if that's who they are or not, but kind of a cool design. They kind of remind me of snails in the sense of like how their eyes are elongated a little bit. They do have a little bit of a shell on their back. Whether you want to refer to that as like a turtle shell or a snail shell, I don't know, but I thought that for the most part it was a pretty cool design. I would be curious to kind of see, like, did they ever do any like puppeteer work, right? Like, did they actually do practical effects for these characters, or were they all kind of CGI? So I would like to learn a little bit more about that particular alien species. But if anything, one, it was a great reunion between these two. But honestly, I think it's the cost of this particular reunion that I think is really going to come to bite Sabine back in the ass, if you will. The fact that we get Thrawn in here kind of even saying to Sabine that she has no idea, like, what the outcome of her decision certainly could be, right? Really lays the blame on what's about to happen to the galaxy at Sabine's feet. And she's definitely carrying that around with her now, because even when Ezra asks her that question of how did you get here? Yeah, it's a long story, but it's probably not going to be a story that he's going to be thrilled to hear, right? The idea is she truly gave up everything, turned her back on the people that she loved in order to kind of find him once again. I don't expect Ezra to like blow up on her or get mad at her, sort of thing. He might be disappointed, but I am kind of curious if maybe Ezra will be the one to kind of teach her the lesson that she needs. They've had such a big bond, and maybe the idea of him finding out like, hey, you eventually tried to learn how to be a Jedi and tap into the Force and work with Ahsoka. Maybe he will have sort of a Jedi lesson for Sabine to certainly learn from, if you will. And maybe that'll put Ahsoka and Sabine sort of back on speaking terms, if you will, because these two are very much kind of upset, probably at each other and a little bit with themselves as well. So, for me, I am looking forward to kind of seeing how Sabine will break the ice to Ezra. And it's also one of those things that's like, I came to this planet, Thrawn found me, but Thrawn let me go so I can find you, sort of thing. Ezra's immediately going to know somebody is certainly following you. And so there is definitely a price to be paid here for Sabine's actions. And despite the fact that this was a great reunion, I don't necessarily know if it's going to end the way that Sabine certainly wants. To be honest with you, I'm under the impression, and again, this is just a gut feeling that I have. I don't think Ezra's going back. As much as he's like, yeah, when can we go home, sort of thing, I do wonder if he's going to have another act of heroism in here that will keep him on this planet, whether that be he sacrifices himself in order to get his friends back, send his friends back where they came from. Whether or not the idea is he decides not to leave with them. Who knows? I just think something bad is happening. If not to Ezra, then I think maybe even possibly to Sabine. But who knows, right? It's just one of those things like when you just look at, granted, look, we still got like 25 years of Star Wars history to get to before we even get to The Force Awakens, right? So where are some of these characters at? Are they in our galaxy? Are they stuck in this other galaxy after all these years? I will be very fascinated to kind of see how this story is going to end for Ezra and Sabine. But, I thought for the most part, the actor that played Ezra in here, pretty good. I definitely felt Ezra-isms coming from him, just like voice wise, the way he smirks and shrugs his shoulders, the way he interacts with Sabine. It almost took me back to where I almost thought to myself, like, is this the voice actor of Ezra portraying him finally in live action? I don't believe so, but the actor was convincing enough. Outside of looking like Jesus himself, Ezra, the actor that played Ezra, I thought did a pretty good job. But it's all fun and games right now. But I do think we're going to have some really, really tough conversations come episode 7, and I'm personally here for it, man. I also want to talk a little bit about Balin's skull because, again, I got to tell you, man, sometimes people just get taken away from us way too early, and Ray Stevenson is one of those people, man. It is hard to watch Ahsoka and not be, and at the end of every episode be like, damn, I miss you, Ray Stevenson. Because he is just creating a character right before our eyes. I mean, look, Dave Filoni can put it on paper all he wants to, but somebody's got to bring it to life and make you believe them. And Ray Stevenson is doing that with Balin. I love his connection to the old Jedi ways and being part of the Jedi Temple and all the stuff that he's had to go through from that time period. Like there's more of Balin that I personally want to learn about. Give me a novel, give me Tales of the Jedi animated short. I want to know more about this guy because I love the way that he thinks and the idea of him being pulled towards this particular planet. While it may look like a wasteland to all of us, he clearly feels like there's some power source in here, if you will, that's really like drawing him to do bigger and better things. I kind of love the idea here that he talks about how we've had so many repeat wars, sort of the back and forth, right? The fall of the Jedi, the rise of the Empire, the return of Thrawn, probably another war sort of thing, and then back and forth. Like, it would not surprise me if we have ourselves another huge war before we even get to something like the First Order, because unfortunately, people don't know their history and things are just bound to repeat themselves. And now we have somebody like Balin who thinks that he's doing the right thing and wants to use this new acquired power that he has to maybe bring an end to sort of that repetitiveness for this galaxy. And he clearly thinks that he is the one with the answers. And by getting that power, he will in fact sort of has those answers. And so he believes that this planet has the opportunity for him to gain power and change things in this galaxy. And I love the fact that he says while he misses the Jedi Order, he kind of misses the idea of it. Not sort of the teachings and the failings that they might have taught, but there is an aspect of the idea of a Jedi Order that he kind of appreciates. And so, he sees opportunity here and power calling to him. So again, does he leave this planet? Is Dave Filoni sort of building up sort of another storyline for them somewhere in the future to eventually be visited, right? Like, will him and his apprentice stay on this particular planet? Will they find this power, or maybe some other Darth Sith that are still like lingering on this planet somewhere and utilize them to kind of create some sort of dark order on this planet? I really don't know. I am kind of curious as to where this is all going to end up when it comes to Balin. But man, Dave Filoni, you've got me enthralled in this guy, and I cannot wait to see where this goes. But I definitely want to know your guys' thoughts on what possibly could certainly happen to Balin here. And last but not least, just to go ahead and end this off, just talking to Ahsoka real quick again. Fearful she made the choice of her own selfish reasons when it comes to thinking about Sabine, right? She even mentions to Huyang that she didn't want to tell Hera that particular part of the story, but based off of that force touch, she definitely understood why Sabine willingly certainly gave up the map and went with them. Not to say that she's certainly not disappointed at all, but I did love this moment in here of her having to come to a realization that things are about to get dark before they certainly get a lot better in here. And the fact that her apprentice has kind of gone down that path, I appreciate, especially after the lesson that she learned in the previous week's episode. She mentioned something along the lines of, she didn't train Sabine enough or in the right way in order to kind of push back on that level of temptation, if you will. And I think she understands her own failings as a master after her conversation and meeting with Anakin, really allowing her own issues to kind of get in the way and provide that blockage of really training up your apprentice the right way. Again, when all you know is war and being a soldier and how to survive, sometimes the intricacies and the details of Jedi teaching, you were not able to be taught to somebody like Sabine. And so, when you miss those opportunities and you walk away from your apprentice sort of thing, it definitely leaves them open for this type of temptation, if you will. And so, I'm glad that she has kind of come to terms with that. I appreciate Huyang even referencing the word fear. Maybe that's a little fear that Ahsoka has, is she has to work on subsiding in order for temptation not to get the best of her also, and maybe have to figure out how she can lower that fear for Sabine, who is very fearful of losing people that she's been connected to and things like that. But these are definitely going to be big, important issues that both master and apprentice certainly learn in the next couple of episodes. But Huyang always coming through with the great line of "Once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away." I thought it was a really great lead into this episode. But yeah, man, Huyang continues to be my MVP of this season. But overall, really enjoyable episode here, guys. Probably maybe my top three. Episode 6 is still my favorite. Episode 5 is still my favorite. Then episode 4. I don't know how I feel about episodes 3 and 6 as of right now in between there. So I'll definitely let you guys know by the end of this season. But look, at the end of the day, these are just simply my A+ opinions. I always want to know yours. What did you guys think about episode 6? Is there anything that I missed that you guys want to continue to talk about? Any other character storyline details you guys want to certainly expand on or let me know about? Let's go ahead and continue this conversation in the comment section box below until next week's episode. But until then, do me a big favor as always, guys. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. May the Force be with you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.